everybody, and thank you for joining us. I'm Karen Lehr with Idaho News 6, and we have a panel of experts joining us tonight, and we are going to be talking about a very important topic, and that's caregiving for patients living with Alzheimer's and dementia here in Idaho. Of course, it's a topic near and dear to our hearts here at Idaho News 6. We are always involved with the Walk to End Alzheimer's, and that is going to look a lot different this year. We're going to talk about that, plus how caregiving for patients looks a lot different this year because of the coronavirus pandemic. So before we dive into that, we are going to introduce our panel of experts joining us today. So first we have Dr. Khan with Regence Blue Shield of Idaho, and I'll have you just tell us a little bit about what Regence does for Alzheimer's care in our state.
Well, good evening, Karen. Thank you for having me. I'm Dr. Amy Kahn. I serve as the Executive Medical Director of Regence Blue Shield of Idaho. And particularly during this time of COVID, at Regence, we are really focused on the care of our members and their family. And for those who are living with persons who have dementia, or you yourself might be struggling with dementia, our effort is to really holistically provide the kinds of support, clinical, emotional, social support that you need to be able to be successful, particularly through this challenging time. I serve as the Executive Medical Director, but my background is an internal medicine physician with a preventive medicine background. So I look forward to our conversation today.
All right. Well, thank you for being with us. And next up on our panel here, we have Adrienne Kavanagh with the Alzheimer's Association, of course, the chapter here in Idaho, and you're very involved in the topic. Tell us a little bit about what you guys are doing here.
Absolutely. Thank you again, Karen, for having us. My name is Adrienne Kavanagh, and again, I serve as the Executive Director of the Alzheimer's Association Greater Idaho chapter. The mission of the Alzheimer's Association is simple: to build a world free of Alzheimer's and all other dementia. While that may sound daunting, it is a inevitability for us. And that's what we work to every single day, in not only providing care and support for individuals and their loved ones that have Alzheimer's and the individuals that are caring for them, which is what we're going to be talking about today, but then also advocating both for policy, funding, etc. The Alzheimer's Association finally is the third largest funder of research, second or third only to the federal government of the United States and the federal government of China. And so we're really, really proud of the work that we do here locally and of the impact that we have globally. So thank you so much for having me here.
Well, thank you for being with us. And of course, Alzheimer's Association, I assume, relies a lot on volunteers, and we have a support group facilitator joining us this evening. So we want to welcome in Amy Haregi and tell us a little bit about what you personally do.
Hi, thank you, Karen. It's great to be here. I'm a volunteer with the Alzheimer's Organization, and I do work as a co-facilitator. And basically, we meet every other week in an evening slot and talk about anything that's concerning the caregivers that are dealing with Alzheimer's or dementia.
Well, it's definitely very important, and we'll talk a lot about that this evening. And we're already starting to get some comments of people impacted personally by this. So anybody who is joining us live, feel free to share some comments or questions, and we'll try to get to those during our discussion. But for some people who may not have a personal connection to this, let's first talk about what is Alzheimer's and dementia. So Dr. Khan, I'll have you kind of explain from a medical perspective, what's the difference here and what are we talking about tonight?
Right. Thanks, Karen. So Alzheimer's dementia is a form of dementia which is characterized by a progressive, irreversible damage to the brain cells known as neurons. And what's characteristic about it are these protein deposits and what we call tangles of protein. There are two different kinds of molecules, if you will, which are symptomatic or linked to Alzheimer's per se. But there are other types of dementia too: vascular dementia, dementia related to the frontal temporal lobe. There's also a Lewy body dementia, and there are also underlying metabolic or other medical causes of dementia. But what's important is that regardless of the type of the dementia, of course, we're going to focus on non-Alzheimer's, many times they can look similarly, and people could have actually a combination of both causes. The main thing is about 5.5, almost 6 million people have dementia, Alzheimer's dementia, or one of its other dementias in our country. And the ratio of women to men is 2 to 1, so twice as many women to men. And it is predictably showing up in the mid 60s, if you will, and then becomes more prevalent. Roughly 1 out of 10 individuals who are over the age of 65 have or will develop dementia.
And there's a big range of the severity of symptoms, right?
There are, yeah. It can range from mild, moderate, or severe, and typically it may the changes that start happening may start happening years before it's become obvious that that individual's struggling. Persons might start with having some memory impairment, maybe aren't able to recall things as crisply or sharply, particularly those recent events, but then start having some thinking difficulties and ultimately maybe not functioning like they would normally function. So it can look curious for many. Many times it's the family members, the spouse who's starting to notice a different, or a coworker potentially, for those that might have a rarer variant, which starts much younger, say in the 40s, if you will, a much rarer familial gene dominant version, if you will. But it does progress over time, but it's very variable. Some people progress more quickly than others.
And Adrienne, I'll have you kind of join the conversation here. What are we seeing? We mentioned millions of people in the US living with Alzheimer's. What are we seeing on a local level and here in Idaho? How many Idahoan families are impacted by this?
So we have about 27,000 Idahoans currently living with Alzheimer's or some other dementia. Or just Alzheimer's, excuse me. I think the most alarming thing, however, is if you look at the increase of Alzheimer's in the state, we predict that we will see about a 22% increase in the rate of Alzheimer's in Idaho in the next 5 years. Think about that. That's 22% in the next 5 years. We're not talking 30, 40, 50,000 or 50 years down the road. We're talking about the next 5 years. This is a problem that's going to be very significant in the state of Idaho in a very short order. What we also know is that we have 87, and this links back to what we're going to talk about later, but we know that there's 87,000 unpaid caregivers in the state of Idaho that are taking care of those 27,000 individuals. And so just not only the impact that it has obviously on the person that's diagnosed with dementia, but the impact that it has on caregivers is ever but as significant.
Well, then, Amy, I'll bring you into the conversation here. Who does this impact? It's not just the patients. There are a lot of family members living with this. What do you see?
Yes, all sorts of family members, spouses, and children. In my case, it was my father that had dementia, and it has broad-ranging effects for everyone who's a friend or family member of the person with dementia.
And Dr. Khan, you mentioned it's often these loved ones who are noticing some of these signs at first before the patient themselves may notice something's off. What should people who are listening and watching tonight be aware of? What should they be listening for or looking for? What are some of these main indicators?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think first and foremost, it's important to really be respectful to our loved one. We all know under stress, we might forget something, on occasion, or can't remember where I parked my car or what have you. I mean, that's not a problem, right? But a pattern of these odd sort of behaviors or slippage of, if you will, of sort of cognitive function are important to sort of acknowledge, say, oh, wow, it seems like you can't find your car keys. That's happened several times this month. Something we might want to talk to your doctor about. I mean, just be really very, compassionate and the same part, respectful in being able to, start that dialogue with the loved one. Many times, like I said, it's the spouse that's going to be noticing things, whether it's maybe things are disappearing or forgetful or lost some items. Maybe you find that things are located in a funny place. You wouldn't expect like a quart of milk to be put out on the work workshop table, or, you might not, you may open the drawer and you find something that you wouldn't expect there. Sort of these things that feel like, wow, that's weird. Like, how did that happen, right? So it's really that caregiver or the spouse or a child, adult children that might notice mom or dad might be, sort of not quite there. What's really important, again, because this is a progressive condition, is to, really kind of be able to start using words that are, going to be supportive. Hey, I noticed that this is, a problem, or it's been an issue. We've lost the keys. Let's make an extra set of keys. Let's talk about ways that we can, make sure that, we go out together, particularly if people are not finding their way home. I mean, there's just a number of ways in which this can manifest, but getting some professional support with often the primary care physician would be a first place to call, or if there's another family member who want to join the conversation, just to start that dialogue early, and then be, again, supportive and getting that person the additional help they need toward that diagnosis.
And it's not just, realizing the diagnosis is there, but after the diagnosis is made, these same loved ones and family members then take on even more responsibility. So we want to talk about the importance of caregivers. And I think it's a statistic that the Alzheimer's Association shares that 60% of Alzheimer's and dementia caregivers report feelings of extreme stress. Obviously, a health pandemic does not help that. Now, before we dive into that, we do have a soundbite that we want to share with you from a local woman who shares her experience about caring for her sister. If we could listen to that first.
But as a family member, you're remembering that person as they were. My sister now has declined to the point that she doesn't remember some of the stressful days that she has. Mm-hmm. When she goes to sleep and wakes up the next morning, that's gone. But it's not gone for me.
So I'm sure that that's, something that you all hear from a lot of these families, and some of you have dealt with this on a personal level with your own loved ones. So, Dr. Khan, you do have some experience in this in a personal area as well. And it's not just the nurses and the healthcare workers that have dealt with this. So if you could share a little bit of your insight about what it's like to be a family member looking after one of these people, and the importance of caregivers in their day-to-day life.
Yeah, and thank you for the question. Like many of you who are listening, this affects so many of us. And I had the privilege, after my stepmother died, to actually care for my father, who did have progressive dementia for 6 years prior to his death, about 4 years ago now. And what I would say is, when prior to my stepmother's death, we would talk frequently on the phone. She was obviously the primary caretaker, and she would become very frustrated, about, how many times do I have to tell you, this is because the person just didn't remember. And kind of akin to that audio we just heard in the caller, the person who has this condition, they didn't remember, so it didn't happen. So they didn't know. Or if they had a bad day yesterday, they wouldn't know because it didn't register for them. And so we worked together before she passed about how to respond. It's a really important to, one, recognize that it's not an intentional thing on the part of the person who has this cognitive decline, and that the caretaker doesn't take it personally, which was a big issue, early on, as she was taking care of him. And then subsequent, after her death for other reasons, he came to stay with us and eventually ended up, being in a memory care setting. But what was important is that that I went with the flow, for him. And I don't mean this to sound at all disrespectful, but every day was new for him. Every day was fresh. It was as though he was meeting the same people, but for the first time every day. And so we would just say, oh yeah, hey, this is somebody, hey, lives next door to you, or he's your neighbor or what have you. And we just kind of said yes and, as opposed to yes but, and really stayed away from saying, well, don't you remember? Because the fact is he didn't remember. And so really, with that compassion and that patience, and that sense of, that person, they're your beloved, family member, just keep their spirit, if you will, in mind. was a huge part of being able to join them on their journey. And in the case of my father, on his journey, which was a fairly, progressive decline over a period of years, but nonetheless one that continued to affect his ability to function, to think, and to remember.
And that's a lot of great advice for people who are going through this right now. And Amy, I want to bring you into the conversation because you had mentioned that you have also dealt with this in a personal manner, and caregivers also need support. They're not just here to give support. What can you offer advice-wise for these caregivers on how to care for themselves?
Yes, that's really important. There's always a risk that if you don't take care of yourself, then you're not going to be able to take care of the person that you care for. And so, yes, taking breaks, asking for help, utilizing resources like the Alzheimer's Association support groups, and just talking to people. When you start talking about what's going on with your loved one, you're often amazed to find out that lots of people have been through this, and they provide support as well, kind of in an informal way. My own boss was going through this, so we would talk about what it was like and try to give each other tips for dealing with things. So yes, just talk about what's happening, try to maintain a sense of humor. Humor helps a lot as well, and just live day to day.
I'm sure it means a lot for each of these people to know that they're not alone. They're not the only ones going through this, and there are other people that completely understand. So the support groups, I imagine, are just doing a great job. And we've got someone coming and say, Amy, you are wonderful. So your work is appreciated here. And the role of providing care within the last 6 months or so has obviously changed a lot, especially when we think about long-term care facilities and these memory care facilities, like Dr. Khan, you had mentioned, where your father eventually ended up living. What has changed in that kind of setting over the last 6 months when it comes to health concerns and maybe limiting visitation? How does that role of a caregiver change?
Yeah, so I'll start, and certainly I appreciate if my co-panelists jump in as well. Obviously, this pandemic has had effects on everyone, right? And in these settings where you may have a loved one, there's no doubt that there's been protocols put into place to protect the population of the residents. So we know that there have been limitations on any visitation in some cases. There's certainly been the deployment of all of these personal protective practices, facility practices for cleaning and disinfection, for hand washing, for use of masks, for the distancing, which for someone who is, losing their cognitive ability, this can be incredibly upsetting, right? Not to mention the family who is no longer able to go in and see their loved one, right? So we know that some facilities are able to set up opportunities for connecting with, say, a mobile phone through a window, which is just incredibly, challenging as it is, but let alone having that person who has that cognitive decline not necessarily understand. One of the ways in which the facilities, I think, have allowed family members to sort of still be with their loved one is through these tablets or phones, the smartphones we have, being able to, sort of be on FaceTime or, link up through a Zoom call and have other family members there. It does require that the caregiver staff, right, have to set that up, and it puts a, significant more stress on these individuals who are day in, day out taking care of these loved ones on different shifts, 24/7, and in particular now adding on that component. But it adds, I think, to the overall stress and a sense of mourning, loss, as we often feel as the family member when someone is in their descent, that they are sort of drifting away from us. With COVID, I think we've had even a more feeling of separation, and it's been a challenging divide to basically cross.
Yeah. If you don't mind, Karen, one of the things that we found, and this is nothing new, especially to the people that are watching, Alzheimer's is an extremely isolating and stigmatized disease, especially for caregivers. And then when you add COVID on top of that, it is it just exacerbates that. And so a lot of our family caregivers or loved ones that are at home just feel trapped because they can't leave, they can't take their loved ones, and then again, while the different stages, et cetera, of our COVID enforcement change, while a lot of interest has been shown to local bars, restaurants, recreational facilities, et cetera, which is all valid, right? Like definitely support local business. I think one of the things that's lost in conversation, as Dr. Khan talked about, is just the weight that this comes on long-term care facilities. So when we are in stage 4, individuals are not allowed into long-term care facilities per the state of Idaho. And what is necessary and will sometimes ground people with Alzheimer's is routine, predictability in their day, right? So they wake up at a certain time, then they have dinner with the same people, and it's predictable. And so while you are sending love to teachers, which are hurting, and waiters and waitresses that are hurting, think of our local caregivers because they are being asked to do more and really through love of their job, really step up and do the extra things that Dr. Khan was talking about. And they just are angels, absolute angels for doing so.
I do want to bring in a comment from one of our viewers. I think I can pull it on screen here. If not, I'll just read it. It's from Adriana Dugan that says, my gramps had dementia and passed in September, and my mom also had it and passed 3 months ago. You can see there on the screen now.
Oh my
She
God.
was in memory care, and my caregiving journey is now over. My mom went downhill when I couldn't see her anymore. So Amy and Adrian, is this something that you are hearing from many families in Idaho right now with this tough time not being able to see their loved ones in these facilities?
It's really hard on the families and on the patient as well. Definitely hearing that. COVID has made everything more difficult, and they can't see the person that they care about. And the technology is wonderful and helpful, but some of them don't recognize that I'm talking to somebody on the phone that's outside the window, and they don't make the connection. And so it's been a lonely, hard time for the families and the patients.
And another viewer chiming in, Julie Lopez, says, I was a caregiver for my mom with Parkinson's and dementia. It was so hard caring for her and also working 40 hours at my job. She is now in a nursing home, so now I can just be her daughter. I get window visits during this pandemic. So what are you guys seeing in how families can still connect during this difficult time?
Yeah. I think that COVID has been hard for you and I to navigate, correct? Like, I think that it's hard to conceptualize any of this anymore, and it's hard for anyone. And so imagine trying to explain to someone who is used to seeing their wife every day why they can't see their wife now every day. It's extremely, extremely hard. And like Dr. Khan said, there's the most exasperating thing, at least for me, is if there was a good, simple answer, we would have come up with it, right? And because there's not. And so just like your Julie said, window visits are real. Some facilities are allowing outside courtyard visits, but some aren't. I mean, it's really about I would encourage anyone with somebody in a long-term care facility to work with the administration there to figure out a solution that works best for their loved one, for their family, but also keeps the health of their loved one paramount in that decision.
And for those in this situation where maybe family members are prohibited, what extra added stress does this add for the staff at these facilities? That do they feel that they're taking on extra roles of loved ones and caregivers and healthcare providers and all of this at once?
Absolutely. Because not only are they, and I apologize, Dr. Khan, not only are they taking on communication, like liaison between them and their family, but now they're only allowed where, even something as menial as meal times, right? So it used to be that they could bring everybody out into their cafeteria area or meal area, feed everyone at once, and then go and do activities together, etc. And now they're prohibited from doing that. And so there's shifts of activities or shifts of meal times, or, and some facilities have a wing that has a COVID patient and then some that don't. I mean, It is a case by case, facility by facility basis. So that's why I say if you have a loved one in a long-term care facility, just make sure that you are communicating with that facility on a regular basis about decisions that are being made for your loved one.
Dr. Khan, did you want to jump in there?
I did, just to echo the fact that, these workers are heroes. They are not only shouldering the responsibility that comes with preventing a transmission of this, novel coronavirus within a facility. They're potentially exposing themselves to this infection and potentially when they go home. So they constantly have that on their mind, and then filling in to really take up that slack where our family members haven't been able to be there because of this pandemic. And so I really want to, sort of stress that, it is an opportunity for family members who can't be there physically, maybe to think about ways that you can still be in touch with your loved one, support the caregivers in the facility, maybe by sending some more photographs, something that reminds your loved one of you. Maybe it's they love certain kinds of flowers, or they're very interested in a certain kind. Maybe send a care package, some of their favorite things, or a stuffed animal, or something that is meaningful to them, right? We think about technology and how that might play a role, but for many, it's still too hard to manage, right? So, again, looking at these other ways makes a lot of sense going forward to support not only that care team at the facility, but the loved one that is not seeing you like they used to through this really unusual and protracted time.
And Amy, I want to bring you into the conversation. What are you seeing when you are talking with these support groups as far as some of the biggest concerns, or what are people upset with as far as the situation goes right now when it comes to caregivers? What are they dealing with, and what do they wish was different? A lot, I'm sure.
Yeah, just not being able to see the person that they care about. Even if someone is living in a facility with dementia, you spend a lot of time there visiting with them and talking with the staff, and trying to help with any needs that they might have, or even sometimes acting as a form of a counselor or a translator, excuse me. Because sometimes your loved one will tell you things that they won't tell the staff. And so there's just a lot of worry because you don't know exactly what's going on, and you're not able to help. And so it's quite a strain, and it's just difficult.
And do you have support groups meeting virtually right
Yes.
now? Are there ways for these people to connect with each other? If you want to share any resources, I'm sure a lot of people would find that useful.
Yes. So there, as far as I know, and correct me if I'm wrong, Adriana, every support group is now virtual. So we use like a Zoom-like product to meet at a specified time weekly or every other week in the case of the one I'm working with. And anyone can join, and we just get on there and we just talk about what's going on in everybody's life and how their family members doing, and we try to provide suggestions for each other. And so you can go to the Alzheimer's site and check out the Idaho chapter, and they'll have times and days of weeks that are available. And I do one in the evening because I work during the day, but there's ones all throughout the day during the week. So just a lot of resources for people.
And that was the website that we were just showing you there on your screen. The site's at the bottom, alz.org/Idaho. So Adrian, if you want to touch on what other kinds of resources are available on that website and what people may be able to find useful there.
Absolutely. I want to stress, because I see some of the comments of individuals that are just stressed out. And these are loved ones that are caregiving or know someone who, or is in a family, maybe they're not the primary caregiver, but they're certainly looped in to decisions. I think that it is hard to articulate just how isolating and stressful this can be. And just the very fact of knowing that you're not alone, that there are other people that are going through this, and where you can say the things that you can't say to your loved one, right? Where you can vent some of that, get help with that, and really build community. And one of the opportunities that we've found with our virtual or online support groups is when you go virtual, you can be anywhere. So we have individuals from rural parts of the state that sign in, and and are able to get support and care from that. On our website, you'll also see tips for caregivers. I know that it was shown earlier. Tips for caregivers during COVID-19, both for facilities and, yes, they're right there, tips for caregivers. So this is just even specific things like you're going to have to remind the individual with dementia probably to wash their hands more often, because that's not something that they will do. How do you, again, you can see it on the screen there, but just tips for caregiving at home. And then one of the things that we have is also education webinars. So we have webinars on communication tips. One of the things that you guys talked about earlier is, how do you know if somebody has Alzheimer's? What should you look for? We have a class called the 10 Warning Signs of Alzheimer's. And so we have all kinds of resources. The one, though, that I will tell you about that you could implement right now is right there at the top. Sorry, as you get away, but right there at the top, there's that 24/7 helpline. That is, I call it the 1-800 number that actually helps people. At the end of that helpline, 24/7, that's 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, holidays, birthdays, etc. That is, at the end of that line, are clinical master's level clinicians that can help you from anywhere from my husband mistaken our closet for the bathroom for the 3rd time today, and I just can't take it anymore. Or I am stressed out. I don't know what to do. My loved one is in Utah and I'm stuck in Idaho and I can't take this anymore. At the end of that line is, again, master's clinical level help for individuals at any time of the day. So that has literally been a lifeline for a lot of people.
And just to make it a little easier to see, we do have it there at the bottom of your screen. And you don't have to call right now, but if you want to write it down and make a call later, the number is there for you. And just more proof of the load that some of these healthcare providers are providing right now. Julie comments, the caregivers at Life Care of Treasure Valley, where my mom is, are now her extended family. They give her the hugs I can't during the pandemic. They call her grandma and are so loving. So is this something that you guys are hearing from some family members, where these healthcare providers are stepping up right now?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well,
Yeah,
great
absolutely.
To hear. Go ahead, Dr. Khan, did you want to say something?
Yeah, sure. Well, just, what I also think we forget is that our loved ones develop relationships with other residents too. And I think what's particularly hard and, it's challenging is when they're separated within a facility, they're also even more feeling disconnected. Even if they, didn't really know who that person was, there was still another person that was someone they had seen before or someone that was part of their community. And so I do think it's, important, again, to think about strategies that are going to support not only those facility, caregivers and your loved ones, but the whole community. It's an extraordinarily, unique time, which is, as was mentioned already by Adrian, get support, talk about this. And even if you're at home and you can't see your loved one, it's important to take care of yourself, talk to your other friends, your family members, others that might be going through a similar piece, whether or not they're in a dementia, state, or maybe just infirm, or maybe hospitalized or confined to a skilled nursing facility. I think that making sure that we're making real for what's happening in our lives, and then getting that additional help and support, not only socially, but even, professional help, issues around, sleep problems, maybe, depression, anxiety, really addressing those emotional needs. I know through Regence and many of the other plans, even through other ways within the state of Idaho, there's virtual ways to get some additional support. Telehealth has become much more common now. And I, really want to underscore that it's important to take care of yourself so that then you can be able to take care of those around you.
We talk about virtual resources. One of the biggest fundraisers of the year for the Alzheimer's Association is now going to be virtual. So normally we are part of the Walk to End Alzheimer's. Us at the station, we usually get a big crew together and we all get down there. And I'm sure that's a way that a lot of people connect with other people, meet new people going through the same thing. Adrian, how is this going to be different this year, and how can people still be a part of that and still make connections and still get involved?
Yeah, we tell people that Alzheimer's doesn't stay behind a screen, and neither are we. And so this year, walk is everywhere. We think that we still need to get out with our micro communities and walk. And so that's why we are actually really, really excited about this year's walk. Here in the Treasure Valley, it's going to be on October 3rd. And in Magic Valley, it's this weekend. You can still register. Just go to alz.org/walk, and you can register a team. We have found that individuals are digging in more with us than they ever have before. And that just speaks to, we often joke that the Walk to End Alzheimer's is the community's largest support group, because it is so important. The work that we're doing is so important. And you'll hear this a lot, Alzheimer's doesn't care that there is a global pandemic right now. And so we are just as committed as we ever have before, if not more now, because what we realize, if it's not us, who is it? Who is it if it's not us? And so if people that are listening now would like to go on, start a team. It's really easy. You just find your walk, and there's a thing there that says register your team. You just click on that, and then get your friends and family, your COVID bubble, what I call your micro community, together and walk wherever you are. And so you can log in when you register for your walk. It'll let you know when our opening ceremony is, which is at 11 o'clock on your respective day. You watch the opening ceremony with us, which is inspiring and wonderful. And then you hit the streets, or your biking path, or your walking path, or up in the foothills, wherever it is that you walk, to join us to fight this disease.
And I think there are also virtual volunteer opportunities, right? Tell me about that.
Absolutely. And so we have opportunities for individuals that want to help us get the word out. We have opportunities for individuals that want to help us fundraise or take care of our sponsors, or there's a number of different ways. I believe that if somebody wants to give me an hour of their time, I have a place for them. So if individuals, again, that are watching, if they want to contact us through the walk page, or you can email me directly, I would be happy to do that. So yeah, it's really, really an exciting time, and to see our community just really rally around this important cause is the reason that I get up every morning. So.
Well, Amy, from your perspective as a volunteer, why do you get involved? Why is this something that you like to be a part of?
Well, I had such a good experience with the Alzheimer's Association. Like Adrienne was talking about, my first contact was with the 1-800 number. I called a couple of times when my dad first became ill to help get some information, and they were very, very helpful. And so I have, unfortunately, my father has since passed away, but I went through the whole process from diagnosis all the way through, and people just need a lot of help. And you learn so much when you're going through it. You just feel like if you don't help, it's kind of wasted. So I am happy to help others go through it and maybe make their path easier. And I kind of honor my father that way.
Well, I'm sure your insight from being on the other side of things is also really helpful for everybody that you come in contact with. So I know they're not here right now, but I know they all appreciate what you all are doing at the Alzheimer's Association. And if people aren't available to walk, Adrienne, maybe they have another commitment that day, they can still make a donation and help out, right?
Absolutely. At the top of every one of the walk pages, you'll see a big button that says donate. And so you can go on and just donate to our walk in general, or if there's a friend or family that you can find who is involved, you can find their name and donate to them. Or I know that KIVI and KSA, the two respective channels here in the Treasure Valley and in the Magic Valley, have their own teams. So if you have nowhere else to donate, if you are just desperate for a place to donate, find Idaho News 6 and donate to their team.
And if you need any other convincing there, depending on which team makes more money, either Don Nelson or Roland Barris are going to get a pie to the face. And if we can raise enough money, they will both get a pie to the face. So if that's not enough motivation for you all, then hopefully all the good that you guys do at the organization is motivation as well.
Yeah.
So what does that money go toward? If they do make a donation, how do they know where that's going to be spent?
Yeah. So I'm actually really proud of how the Alzheimer's Association spends our money. 77% of everything that we raise, so 77 cents of every dollar goes straight towards advocacy, research. Yeah, use dollars at work. Research, everything that we Karen support, everything that we do to help our community goes straight towards that. 18%, so 18 cents. I will take 18 cents of a dollar that you give me, that you donate, and I'll make it another dollar. And then only 5% of everything that we raise goes towards what you would consider administration or overhead. I'm extremely proud of that. To give you an example, along with some of the other things that we do, so not only globally do we do, or nationally do we do research, but again, with all of the support groups and education classes that I mentioned, one of the other things that we do is something called care navigation. And anybody who has been through this, whether it's people watching or my friends on the panel here, will tell you that when you first get that diagnosis, it feels like all of the decisions that you have to make feel like a tsunami. They feel like a job in and of themselves. And we have a trained social worker on staff who has been in this industry for well over a decade or 15 years or so. Take family by the hands and walk them through the diagnosis. So
having a little bit of tech problems there, as you can expect with all things virtual these days. Well, we can get back to Adrienne there if she's able to join us again. But before we part ways, of course, that website is still on the bottom of your screen for anybody watching that wants to take a look at some of those resources, join our team, make a donation, or sign up to make your own walking path on October 3rd for the Treasure Valley. Amy, I want to just head to you and see if you have any kind of closing thoughts before we part, any advice for people that are watching and caregivers and how they can find support.
Yes, absolutely. They should definitely reach out to the Alzheimer's Association, to support groups. Just don't try to do it alone. The Navigator project that Adrienne was talking about, having somebody walk you through the steps. It's absolutely true that it's a tsunami of decisions that have to be made, often financial and legal and practical, from, where will they live? How will we pay for it? And it just can be overwhelming. And some good advice in the beginning can help you be set up to be, to make it less stressful as you go through it. So definitely just reach out for help and take care of yourself, because your loved one does need you to be healthy to help them.
Yeah, you can't pour from an empty cup, we say a lot. So take care of yourself first, better to take care of others. We appreciate you joining us tonight, Amy. And Dr. Khan, any closing thoughts on your end as far as what people can take away from this topic and how they can kind of be a part of helping out?
Yeah, thank you. I think what I'd close with is just saying that, honor your loved one, honor the spirit of who they are, recognizing that, you may not have any ability to control the progression of the disease, but you know who they are. And I really believe that they are still there emotionally to connect with you. So even through virtual means or other kinds of symbols that are important to you and to them, make that part of their journey and your journey as you continue to get through this time. Recognizing that, ultimately you want to be able to take care of yourself, but you can still look and explore ways to be able to support them even through a distance.
Well, we appreciate you joining us. And were we able to get Adrienne back on with us? There she is. Did you want to share any closing thoughts about how people can get involved and what this means for the community? Adrienne, can you hear us? I'm not sure if she can hear us. Well, if she was able to hear us, there you go. Well, what I'm sure she would want to
can you
say
hear
is
me?
get onto the website. There you are. Yes, we hear
Yeah,
you.
I don't know if I'm coming in clearly. I'm sorry about that.
No worries.
But
we've all dealt with this a few times by now in 2020. So I'll just give you a second to catch up. Adrian, can you hear us? Well, maybe we can get that website back up on the screen one more time. It's alz.org/walk if you guys want to get involved. And of course, as we mentioned, the Walk for the Magic Valley is this weekend. It's virtual. You can join an existing team. You can make one with your little COVID bubble, your family unit. And the Walk for the Treasure Valley is scheduled for October 3rd. Idaho News 6, we have a team that you can make a donation to. KSA, our station in the Magic Valley, also has one. So we'll have those websites online for you. And if there was any part of this conversation that you missed, that you want to maybe rewatch with a family member or send to somebody else, this is all going to stay up on our Facebook page as soon as we finish here. So you can share that link with your loved ones and encourage others to get involved. And again, Amy and Dr. Khan, we really appreciate you being a part of this conversation. And for those watching online, thank you for joining us as well. But for now, we will say good night, and we will have a little portion of this on the news tonight on Idaho News 6 at 10 o'clock.
Great. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bringing attention to the issue. Thank you.